Good evening, everyone, and welcome to April 13th at Sanctuary Online. We are so excited to welcome you here tonight. And tonight is it's a travel night, right? Y'all have your passports, I hope? Oh, unnecessary, unnecessary, because we are headed to Egypt tonight with Barb Crabtree. Barb, a little bit of post-presentation applause. Come on, can we do this and give some clicks and all that kind of love, right? Incredibly excited. So welcome you. I think I've seen everyone here tonight. So normally I ask you to do all those wonderful things in the chat box, like let us know your name and your phone number and your email, where you're calling in from. I would bet that we have most of that on file, except for that bird on your head, Sandra.
Right.
Does Blueberry have an email address?
He does.
Okay, then
I'll make sure you get it. It's in the mail.
Oh, so April at Sanctuary, my friends, a much calmer, more chill, a little bit of a lighter month than last month. But we finished our March book conversation last week. Thank you, Cheryl, for hosting that. Care of the Soul by Thomas More. And tonight we are going to Egypt. So incredibly excited. I'm going to quickly run through the welcome so we can get right on to Barb's presentation. And I just have to tell you, though, next week we are meeting Edie Disler with a Meet the Artist presentation, a new Sanctuary Online feature. We're incredibly excited to bring Edie and her amazing works of art to you. So that's one not to miss. And a book that Cheryl is loving. If you have not begun to read Sue Monk Kidd's The Book of Longing, Cheryl, what do you think? They still have time, right?
Yeah, it's a fabulous book. It's very fun to read. It's hard to put down.
There you go. And over the last couple books we've chosen, this is a nice, nice change of pace. So that's all I'm going to say, Barb. I'm going to give it all up to you.
All right.
And jump in, my friend. I'm on mute, and I'm just going to enjoy your presentation.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Thanks, everybody, for spending a little bit of your Tuesday evening with learning a little bit and having a little fun and sharing some stories about Egypt. First thing I want to thank Ken and Tom for dressing the set here. The picture behind me is one of the souvenirs that I brought back from Egypt, and the little mannequin is wearing a scarf and a necklace that were souvenirs purchased in Egypt. So that's what's going on with the set, and I thank them for putting that together. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go ahead and just get this started. So here we go. Ready? And in January of 2020, I had the great opportunity to travel for a 10-day trip. And it was 8 days in country and 2 days, traveling to and from. And I hadn't planned on going into any of the details about the tour company or any logistics tonight. If you're interested in that, my email, maybe Cheryl or Joe, you put in the chat box my email, barb@sanctuaryinthewoods.com. But feel free to send me an email and I can chat about it or give you more information about it later on. So what we're going to do tonight, this was an 8-day trip, and there's no way to do the stories justice and share any of the fun stuff without racing through if we tried to do it all. So tonight we will visit the pyramids and the Valley of the Kings. And you can see from the map that the pyramids are located up here near Cairo, just outside of Cairo on the Giza Plateau. And this is called Lower Egypt, even though it's in the north. And I always get that confused. And the south of Egypt down here near Aswan and Abu Simbel is where is called Upper Egypt. And the reason it's exactly backwards from the way I want to think about it, but this is the highlands here, and the Nile River flows from the highland in the north, or the highland in the south. It flows north into the lowland in the Mediterranean. So this is why this is called Lower Egypt and this is called Upper Egypt.
Got it.
At the time the pyramids were built, Cairo didn't exist, and Cairo wouldn't exist. It was actually founded as kind of a Roman fortress. So it was millennia after the pyramids were built, before Cairo was there. And so today you can stand on the steps of the pyramid on the blocks and look out and see the entire city of Cairo and Giza. sprawled out before you. It's really right on the outskirts. The pyramids are right on the outskirts of the major metropolis. And going from Cairo to Giza is kind of like going from one neighborhood in the city. Like if you're stopped at a traffic light and you're going from one suburb to another, you cross over the street, you're in a different suburb. For the Floridians, think University Avenue. If you're south of University, you're in Sarasota County, and if you're north of it, you're in Manatee County. So that's what it's like going from Cairo to Giza today. It's just all, you know, mega sprawl. But just south of where the star is there, you might be able to see Memphis on the map. Memphis was the capital of the Old Kingdom, and that's where the pharaohs lived, and they had their palaces, and they ruled from Memphis. And so it makes sense for the pyramids to be built just north of that in Giza. It was proximate to where they were living and ruling from. So we're gonna spend some time. We're gonna visit the pyramids, and then we're gonna travel south to Luxor, which was the capital of the New Kingdom. It was known as Thebes at that time, and then we're gonna see the Valley of the Kings. So the first pyramid, to give you a little bit of historical context for this, the first pyramid was constructed about 2650 BCE, which is roughly 4,670 years ago, a long time ago. Elsewhere in the world, what else was going on? Stonehenge, the construction had already begun. Stonehenge began about 3000 BCE, so a few hundred years before the construction of the pyramids. So fast forward from there about 1100 years, the Egyptians built pyramids only for about 300 years. And if you fast forward for 1100, you get to the Valley of the Kings. So by then, the capital of Egypt had moved to Thebes, and they were now burying their pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings. Fast forward again another 11 or 1200 years, and you get the Great Wall of China. And then another 150 years, you get Alexander the Great invading Egypt, invading everything really, conquering all over the world. And then you get the Ptolemies, the Ptolemaic dynasties, ending with Cleopatra with the Romans. So, and then you get the birth of Jesus. So just for a fun fact to kind of put things in perspective, we are 2,000 years past the birth of Jesus today. The pyramids were 2,650 years before the birth of Jesus. We are actually closer to the time of the birth of Jesus than the pyramids were.
Wow.
That's some perspective on how long ago. This is Saqqara. It's called the Step Pyramid. It's the very first pyramid that was built. Prior to this pyramid, burials were in mud, brick, one-level buildings called mastabas. And the Step Pyramid was innovative for two main reasons. First, it was built from stone instead of mud bricks. And second, the architect who was the main innovator in this is a guy called Imhotep. And he decided to stack levels on top of each other. So that was the first time that was done. And the idea, the thinking is, with the archaeologists today, they believe that what he was trying to achieve was building up toward the sun, toward the heavens. And that was what motivated him to do that. But this pyramid is 397 feet by 358 feet and a height of 205 feet. Enormous in and of itself, but they get bigger. And Imhotep is an interesting character. He was today what we would call a Renaissance man. He was an architect. He was the high priest. He was a key administrator for the pharaoh. We might call him a prime minister today. And there is some evidence that he was a pioneering physician and a surgeon. So a little bit of everything. And it's also possible that this guy was the inspiration. If you're a Brendan Fraser fan, and you watched the movie The Mummy 20 years or so ago, there was a series of 3 or 4 of them. But in that movie, Imhotep was the mummy. So In addition to his other list of accomplishments, you can add inspiration for horror films for 4 millennia.
For 4 millennia. Thank you, Barb.
Yes.
Yeah.
Barb, we're already getting some questions in the chat box, so I'll let you go for a while until you feel a stopping point, okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
Let me get through this pyramid and then we'll stop before we do the Great Pyramid.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, so if you're at the Step Pyramid and you've explored around there a little bit and you walk up this embankment and look to your south, and if you're really, really, really lucky and you're there on a clear day like we were, you can see what's called the Bent Pyramid. And this pyramid was built 50 years or so after the first pyramid, after the Step Pyramid. And it's the transition point in between the Step Pyramid structure and the Great Pyramid, where the sides are kind of smooth sloping. And you can see what they did there. They were experimenting. This is, if you look on the left in the distance, you can barely see it there. So I've got a little bit better picture of it as the inset in the top, a little bit closer up. But they started off at a very steep angle, and they built part way up, and then they figured out that it wasn't gonna be sustainable. This thing was gonna fall down if they kept going the way they were going. So they changed the angle and discovered that worked. And that helped them on their way. And 25 years later, they were building the Great Pyramid. So what's going on in the chat box?
Okay, Barb, so we're going way back up here a little bit. We've got, are there plants and flowers, is Liz and Carly. And then Cheryl and Mary answered that somehow with a tree for sure, a special one. Now, is that giving that away later in your presentation, Barb?
No, I have a picture from the Valley of the Kings that will show you exactly how many plants and flowers there are not. But if you are near the Nile, there's lots of greenery. And near the Nile varies depending on exactly where you are. There are places, I don't have pictures of this in this one, but there's enough pictures to do a whole nother one of these if you guys want to hear more later on. But there are places where the Nile is literally just yards away from the desert, and there's very little greenery. And there are places where it's maybe half a mile or a mile wide, and you get decent greenery there, farmland.
Because all the oils, right, Barb, for all the perfumes come from right along the very close to the Nile River, right?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. And there's another question from Lisa Talbot. Said, Barb, what did you feel in proximity to this history? And Lisa, if you've got to unmute to have that.
Oh my gosh.
Clarified.
It was just awe-inspiring. I mean, I just can't even describe what it feels like to be there. And I paid extra. There's a couple slides coming up where I actually went inside the Great Pyramid. Lisa, it was exactly that reason, was because of the historical significance.
Very nearly ended up with the little green space we've got between
church that for you, Barb.
It's a parking lot, because that's what the bylaws require now.
Somebody's not on mute.
Got it. I got it.
Okay.
I found it.
Thank you.
Sorry.
But yeah, it's it's just incredible what you feel being a part of that. And I think the Egyptians get a little bit numb to it. It's kind of like if somebody lives in the Rocky Mountains, yeah, and you see it every minute of every day, it just becomes a part of of where you are and who you are, and it's less impactful each time you see it. But for those of us who were seeing it for the first time, it was just awe-inspiring. I mean, you're just jaw-dropping, really incredible.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Barb and Lisa. Kristen, sure. Did they start building the pyramid while the pharaoh was still alive, Barb, in preparation for his death?
Yes, they did. They started, hold that thought for 1 second. I'm going to talk more about that in the Valley of the Kings. But because it took so long to build both the pyramids and the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, they pretty much started as soon as the pharaoh acceded to the throne. Yep. It was one of their major accomplishments of their reign, was building their own tomb. And the reason for that was that the Egyptians believed that in the afterlife, the pharaoh becomes a god. So it's really important. You can't have the god not have a house to live in.
Yes. Yeah. And a little bigger than the last god's house to live in, right, Barbara?
Yes.
Yeah. And then finally, one last question from Glenda, and then you can move on, Barb. Glenda asks, did you see any tributes to the enslaved Jews who were forced to build the pyramids?
Actually, we didn't really see anything that discussed the Hebrews, and there's not a lot there's not a lot in Egypt of reference to the Hebrew captivity and the time period that they were there. There are a few places, but we didn't actually see them on the trip.
All right, thanks, Barb. I will interrupt you in a few minutes.
Okay, good deal. So now we're gonna go see the Great Pyramid. We've set the stage. This is the Great Pyramid, 20 years to build, granite and limestone. This is the only remaining one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that's still standing. And those are things like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Colossus of Rhodes, the Lighthouse at Alexandria. That's the kinds of things that were in these 7 wonders of the ancient world. And this is the only one still standing. And I just, Lisa, you know, I can't even describe what it feels like to be standing here and how enormous this thing is. You can see some of the dry facts on the slide, but to give you some context, the base is equivalent to 2.5 football fields in length, and the height is equivalent to 1.5 football fields. It was the tallest structure on the planet for nearly 4,500 years, which is just incredible to think of. So to give you an idea of another kind of a tangible example of how big the base of this thing is. Anybody here run track or cross country?
Kristen looks like she did.
Okay. Somebody want to give me a starter count here? When you say, you know, on the mark, get set, go, I'm gonna, when you say go, I'm gonna click the mouse and start something, and then I'll explain what I'm doing after I start the mouse.
On your mark, get set, go.
Okay, so you see the orange box crawling across there. If, for you track runners or cross-country runners, for a long time, nobody could run faster than a 4-minute mile. That was the big deal, was to break the 4-minute mile. And now, today, of course, a lot of people run faster than that. If you run a 4-minute mile, you're way back in the pack. But for somebody who runs a 4-minute mile, it would take the length of time this crawler is taking to go across the screen to run from one side of the base of the pyramid to the other. 34 seconds for someone who runs a 4-minute mile to go across there. Just unbelievable size and scope. These pictures give you a little bit more perspective. If you've ever stood at the rim of the Grand Canyon with your camera and thought to yourself that there's no way any picture is ever going to do this justice, that's exactly the same reaction I had here with the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid. I did the best I could capturing, and there's a little variety of these shots to let you see. This is from the corner looking up, and it just looks like it goes forever, you know, and disappears into heaven almost. The middle picture here is the road approaching, you know, after you've paid the entrance fee, then you get to walk up this road to approach the pyramid itself. And you see, I'm pretty far back in the pack. There's some little tiny people way up here, and how enormous this pyramid is compared to the little ant people. And then on the right, you actually get to crawl up on the blocks, go partway up the pyramid. And I put this one in here so you can see on the fact page, I said that there were 2.3 million blocks, 2.3 million of these, each one weighing 2.5 tons. And you can see compared to the people in size in there, how big these blocks are. Just, the size is just incredible. So I got to go inside the Great Pyramid. I did pay a little extra to do this. This was not automatically included, but I couldn't go to Egypt and not do this because of the history and how important that all was. So this little diagram here, right over here where it says entrance, is where, this is what the caves are. This is the entrance to the Great Pyramid. And you kind of go down a little bit and then up a little bit. And to me, it felt like this diagram is more dramatic than what's actually going on. Didn't feel like it was going down that much or up that much. But then you go into this grand gallery here. And at the top of the grand gallery, you bend over and duck walk through a 2.5 to 3 foot tall passage into the king's chamber, the king's burial chamber. The chamber is about 1/3 of the way up and about halfway into, about in the center of the base wise, but only about 1/3 of the way up. And if you see from this diagram, those little slashes on top of the king's chamber, those are really important engineering innovations. They're granite slabs, and what they do is they redirect the weight of the upper part of the pyramid to
Wow.
keep it from crushing down on the king's chamber. So you go in and you go down the little path and up the little path, and then you get to a set of steps that are not original. This was not built by the pharaoh or the architect. These are built by archaeologists to facilitate being able to get into the Grand Gallery a little better. This is what the Grand Gallery looks like. And I know it's a little hard perspective to see what's going on, but you can see in the picture on the left up at the top, that's the railing, the hand railing there. And then you can see the hand railing running along each side here going up. Look at, it's not an optical illusion. The sides are actually getting narrower. You can tell that from the opening at the top. You see the base is wider than the top. And this is called a corbelled ceiling. And this is another engineering innovation to keep the weight, to redirect the weight so that the chamber doesn't collapse. Take a look at the walls here. They're just plain stone. There's nothing else going on. There's no carving, there's no painting, there's no decorating. They were much more worried at this stage about just having the thing stand up than they were about making it pretty. That'll come later on. So I don't have the same degree of engineering skill that I don't know if you can see me in the gallery there. If you can, yeah, there you go. Thank you. But this is my level of engineering skill. I took a piece of cardboard and folded it over at a 90-degree angle and then folded it in half again. So this slope is about 22.5 degrees. So the Grand Gallery is a little steeper than this slope here, but wow. That's the best I can do for engineering.
Thanks, Barb.
Thank you. Okay, now at the top, after you've bent over and duck walked through the granite slabs, the passageway where the granite slabs were that sealed the chamber, you go into this open room. And it basically is just a big open room with the granite sarcophagus at the other end. Originally, the archaeologists believe that this room was filled with grave goods, gold, textiles maybe, offerings to sustain the pharaoh in the afterlife. All kinds of things would have been in here, weapons, and the tomb robbers got to this, and there was nothing there when the archaeologists got in there and discovered it.
Wow.
Okay, it looks like the chat box has been lighting up, so.
A little bit. Yep, Barb. Jordan is wondering, were you wearing a headlamp there when you went into the Great Pyramid?
No, Jordan. They actually, it's kind of like going into like Mammoth Cave or something like that. They have lighted it for tourists.
Okay, and then let's see here. Folks are asking, Dr. Aaron and Garth are asking, how many died? Do you remember how many died making the tomb? or the pyramid, Barb, and what materials, if any, actually hold it together?
There is no cement or anything. The blocks are just stacked on top of each other. And they are carved so well that there are places where you can't fit a piece of paper between them. They are quarried out in southern Egypt, floated up the Nile, loaded off the boat, and dragged up to the pyramid. So, you know, they can't even like measure it in place. They're just making blocks all to the same standard, and then transporting them and assembling this thing.
Well, and Barb, not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I've done some research myself since I was actually in Egypt and crawled on these things when I was in the Marine Corps. What I have read is that we today, even with laser accuracy, could not build the pyramids with the technology that we have today.
I'm not sure about that. They have, the alignment is pretty much true north. The foundation, like with any building, if the foundation's bad, it's gonna fall down. The foundation on this thing is really well done, but they showed, I've watched shows where they show how they can do that by using like a pendulum and having it swing east and west and marking on the line where the north and south is. So there are ways that it could be done, but it is an incredible engineering feat. There's no doubt about that.
All right, you can have your story, but Kristen and I both believe it was aliens. Okay, so we're just going to go out there and we're saying it was definitely aliens. And you can have your story. And there's one more question. Well, actually, it was my question, Barb. When you were talking about the engineering feat above the King's Chamber and also the walls and such, you kept saying they. And what I'm wondering, when you were saying they, or was that built by archaeologists when they discovered this to maintain the pyramid, or was that the original?
The only thing that the archaeologists did was put these steps in.
So if you go back one more slide, right there above the King's Chamber, that was all by the Egyptians because they knew about the weight and maintaining
That's right.
stuff. Wow.
Yeah. They figured out, the ancient Egyptians, when they were constructing this thing, figured out how to distribute the weight so that it wouldn't fall down.
Wow. Thank you. All right. That is the last thing. Again, Kristen's back on the aliens thing, but you keep on going, Barb. We're gonna let
okay. All right. So the middle-sized pyramid at Giza is for a pharaoh named Khafre. And Khafre is the son of Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid. So Khufu builds this enormous pyramid. He's used so many of the resources that his son has actually got to build a smaller pyramid in order to get done in time and manage within the economic means there. So this statue that's here is a statue of Khafre, Pharaoh Khafre. And when I was there, it was located in the Cairo, the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Now, if you that, I can't even tell you about that museum. It was just, you know, so stuffed full of things. You would stop and look at one thing, take 2 steps, and miss 10 things in the 2 steps that you just walk past. But there are now 3 museums open. One of them, the royal mummies, have been moved to a culture museum that houses the royal mummies. And the Grand Egyptian Museum is now open, that houses a lot of the artifacts. And I'll talk more about that too. So I don't know if this guy is still in the Cairo Museum, the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, or not, but he was there then. And what they were doing, they were beginning to experiment with perspective and design. So you're standing in front of this guy and you just see him standing proud and tall there. And it's not until you go around the side that you see he has a little help. He has the falcon god Horus here with wings on either side of his head to protect him and guide him, you know, in his day-to-day living. But you can't see Horus at all when you're just standing in front of the king. So this is Khafre's pyramid on the right. It's the one that's got the little extra bits of limestone block on the exterior. When they were originally built, all of the pyramids had an outer layer. All of those stones had an outer covering of limestone, and it made them, they were able to put those in smaller blocks and make them, make it look smooth-sided. And they were painted white. So these things like gleamed in the sun with this white. I mean, they must have been stunning when they were newly done. But since then, over the centuries, as different building projects were happening in Cairo and around the other cities, people would just, it was easier to come steal from the pyramids than it was to quarry new limestone. So that's what happened to most of this stuff, is that over the centuries, people who were building new things just came and stole it and repurposed it. In the picture on the left, I'm standing at the back of the Great Pyramid looking at Khafre's pyramid, the middle-sized pyramid. And you can see here, this is actually a museum that houses Khufu's solar boat. The solar boat was discovered in 1954, but the boat itself is a really important part of the ancient belief system. They believe that the solar boat takes the spirit of the gods or the king at night and takes them on the trip through the netherworld, and then reemerges out of the netherworld to embark on the new day. So the solar boat concept appears in art, it appears in drawings on tombs, it's all over the place. And it's a really important concept for it. So in 1954, under a stone wall on the south side of the Great Pyramid, somebody found a row of stone blocks covering up a pit in the ground. And when they dug down under these stone blocks, they found a bunch of piled up cedar wood planks, ropes, and other parts that were needed to reconstruct this ship. And it took them a decade to put together 1,224 individual pieces into this boat, this finished boat. The finished one is 144 feet long. And for comparison, the largest of the Viking ships, the Viking longboats, were generally around 75 feet long, so about half.
Wow.
The Mayflower was about 90 feet long, so about 2/3 roughly of the size of this boat. And the Santa Maria was Columbus's largest. It was his flagship and his largest ship, and it was 117 feet. So this boat is 25 feet longer than Columbus's flagship. Now this handsome fellow was kind enough to pose for me and not spit on me. We got to do a camel ride to a spot closer to the pyramids, you know, where there weren't quite as many tourists, so we could take pictures and they could take pictures of us at the pyramids. The picture that was on the first page of this, that if you've been on my Facebook page and seen anything, you know, the one with my arms kind of up in the air like that, was taken on the camel when they rode us down for the special spot where they took our pictures. And in that spot, you know, like the one on the right there, you can see that's kind of the classic view of the three large pyramids there. And when you see that, it's easy to think that that's all there are, is just the three. But in fact, there are over 100 large pyramids in Giza and Saqqara and Dashur and Meidum and other sites that are relatively close up in that area north of Memphis. Each of these pyramids in its day was the center of an entire complex. It's more proper to say a pyramid complex than it is to say a pyramid, because they were, you know, there was an entire interwoven network of things going on around that pyramid. So they usually, what it was a temple and several smaller pyramids. The smaller pyramids were for either the pharaoh's family, extended family, or for important officials, maybe government officials. And the temple was because the belief was that the pharaoh became a god as they entered the afterlife. And so the temple was so that the high priest could worship the pharaoh god and provide offerings and everything the pharaoh needed in the afterlife. And these temples often happened, went on for centuries after the pharaoh died. It was a long time.
Yeah. Or we've got a lot of curiosity around that boat.
Okay.
So, Kristen wants to know where he went with the boat, and Dr. Aaron wants to know how the heck it got there.
Okay, how it got there was the theory. Many of the archaeologists today theorize that his son, the one that built the medium-sized pyramid, when the pharaoh that built the Great Pyramid died, as a tribute to his father, his son had this boat built and deconstructed so that it could be stored in the ground for his father to use, in his journey through, through the afterlife. That's the theory on how
across
it got
the Great
there.
River, right?
What did he use it for? The actual physical boat was not used for anything.
Ever.
But the belief about the boat was that the spirit of the king used it in his nightly journey through the netherworld. And of course, the fact that it was disassembled wasn't a barrier, because he was a pharaoh god and he could just say, snap my fingers and it's ready to go.
Good. Thank you, ma'am. Keep on rolling. I know we keep pausing you, and I know you're only about a third of the way through, although we're about 40 minutes in. So knock yourself out. And I'm just, it's okay, Barb. What I will tell everybody tonight is, we had some of the best conversations of all of March in the after conversation time. So tonight we're going to honor the hour-long show. And yet, if you want to stick around a little bit, Barb has some more cool photographs, maybe more than you expected to, Barb, but all good. People can pull off at the hour, and wonderful. We appreciate that. And that will be your evening.
Yep.
And yet, if you want to stick around, Barb, we're not going to stop you.
Okay, good deal. So I want to come back to the question about who actually built the pyramids. This picture here is an excavation of a village that was discovered, I think, in the 1980s. And finding this village changed the narrative about who built the pyramids. What they found here, we didn't get to do a tour of the village, so I was disappointed in that, but at least on the drive-by, I could take a picture. But it housed workers, it housed bakeries, they found breweries, they found butchers and doctors, all set up in this village to serve the needs of the workers. And the reason that this changed, all of the artifacts and everything that they found in the village was designed to take care of a very important and effective workforce. So it's the thinking after finding this is that although slaves may have been involved in some of it, that the majority of the workers were actually Egyptians and lived in these villages. And what happened was there appears that there is a core of the workers that worked full-time year-round on building the pyramids. And then there was sort of a seasonal workforce, if you will, because a lot of the farmers during the time that the Nile was flooded and they couldn't be working in their fields would come up and work on the pyramids for 4 months and then go back and do their planting and growing and harvesting. So this was a really important village. And excavation, you'd think by now, after hundreds of years of digging in the dirt, that we would have, archaeologists would have found everything there is to find. But in fact, just this year, there have been 2 major things that have been found. One was like right at the beginning of the year at Saqqara, where the Step Pyramid was, they discovered a cache of 50 mummies, intact mummies. They don't think they were royal pharaohs, but just the intact mummies, they'll be able to analyze them and test, try and determine who they were and what they were doing there. But they think they were probably either minor members of the royal family or maybe officials, government officials or something that were, you know, that were to be buried near the pyramid itself. But that was an incredible find. And it's very rare to find an intact mummy, and to find 50 of them all together was amazing. And then just this last week, if you saw in the news, if you follow any of this, you can Google it, and you'll still see, you know, reports from CNN and other news services. But they found a village, an abandoned city across from Luxor. Yeah. That they're calling it Egypt's version of Pompeii. If you've been to Italy, but they're able to go in, and they're learning from this. I mean, it looks like people just walked away and left the city as it was. So there's pottery, there's remnants of food, there's textiles, there's all kinds of stuff left there intact. There's art. So they'll really get a great snapshot of what life was like in ancient Egypt. And this is probably from, you know, between 1500 and 1100 BCE. All right. So Joe, I'm gonna skip the poll a little bit. We've had some good interaction. I was gonna give you a little quiz here.
I think it's a good poll. Come on, Barb.
Oh, all right, okay. I'm just concerned about the time, but.
You're good. Time for interaction, people. Okay, snap out of it. Okay, I'm curious to see how many will get this right, Barb.
Okay, so here's a little poll for you. We've talked a little bit about how big the pyramids are, and the stone that they're made out of, and how they got them from the quarries. They put them on the boats and moved them. But how did they actually make the pyramids? What did they actually use? What tools did they have? So here we've got a little poll. Tell me what tools you think the Egyptians had available to help them build the pyramids.
Oh, none of these is racing across the front, Barb, but smelted iron is jumping into part number 2. The wheel. No, smelted iron. No, the wheel. Someone thinks there was a crane. The wheel. Smelted iron. Oh, none of these is marching ahead. And
all right.
19 more. Well, come on. Smelted iron. One more for the crane. No more for the crane. Smelted iron. One more for the wheel. None of these.
All right. Well, at the end of the race, the none of these folks have it. That's actually the right answer. The tools that they had available to them, they had copper pickaxes, copper chisels, granite hammers, and other hard stone tools, you know, tools made out of granite. And they moved the stones using sleds. So they didn't have the wheel, they couldn't put it on a cart. So they put it on a flat sled and dragged it across the sand. I saw one of the sleds in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. They had one of them there, but just incredible how they actually got that done.
See, again, proof it was aliens, Barb. Come on. No iPhone, no Google, no Alexa, no Siri. Come on.
So you're thinking aliens?
Pretty sure. Kristen and I not only think, we believe there's proof.
All right.
But apparently it's the 2 of us and 20 other people. So
okay.
I just got off your Alexa. Sorry, Kristen.
All right. Well, I'm gonna zip through one more slide and then pause again if there are any questions that people want to ask. But
good. On to the pharaohs.
After we left the pyramids, we went to see the Sphinx.
Oh yeah.
And we say the Sphinx. Oops, back. There. We say the Sphinx as if there's only one, but in fact, there are hundreds of sphinxes, if that's the plural, all over Egypt. Just everywhere you look, there's whole avenues. In Luxor, there's a 2-mile long avenue of sphinxes that connects Karnak Temple with Luxor Temple. So this is just the largest one and the best known. And you can see from the middle picture here that the Sphinx sets kind of in between the 2 pyramids, the Great Pyramid and the middle-sized pyramid, Khafre's pyramid. And today there's a laser show, which Joe, I think you've seen. Now, all of these seats out here are waiting for it to get dark so they can have the laser show by the Sphinx.
Yeah, they rotate between French, I think Spanish and English. And luckily we were there again the night I thought I would die. It's another time, another story. But it was in English that night, Barb. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Cool. Well, we didn't get to see the laser show, but
you'll have to go back.
You know, we just saw where the setting where they did it. The Sphinx, you can't go up to it. You can't crawl on it like you do the Great Pyramid. And the reason is it's actually in pretty bad condition. The Sphinx is carved out of basically one enormous block of rock. It is not smaller blocks like the pyramid that are stacked up in to make the shape of a Sphinx. It's actually carved out, and it's pretty deteriorated. There is a causeway that they've roped off and built with boards, a boardwalk like to go, and it runs the entire length from the front of the paws all the way down past the end of the Sphinx. So you can walk up and down on the right-hand side past it. You can take pictures from whatever angle. And one of the main spots on that causeway, if you look at the picture on the lower left, is the kissing the Sphinx picture. Yep, it's a thing. There's a spot on that causeway where if you lean in and pucker up and get just the right angle, it looks like you're kissing the Sphinx. And the Egyptians have endless glee in watching the tourists from all over the world pucker up and kiss the Sphinx. So if you have any aspirations to go to Egypt, because this thing is in such bad shape, I'm not sure it's going to last another 4,500 years. You know, plan accordingly. All right, so what else is there? What's going on in the chat box before we travel on to Luxor and the Valley of the Kings?
There's just lots of comments of you puckering up. Did you close your eyes or not? And I think it's time to go on to the pharaohs, Barb. You did a great job. Thanks so much.
All right. All right, so the Valley of the Kings. Remember that question about was there flowers and greenery? Nada, nothing. Sand and rock, not one blade of anything green in the Valley of the Kings. And so you can see here, there's a little map that there are 65 tombs that have been discovered to date in the Valley of the Kings. And this little map shows you, apparently there's no real rhyme or reason about it. Some of them are relatively short. Some of them go on a long ways. Some of them go out and then turn. Some of them are pretty straight. Some of them go up. Some of them go down. Some of them are just flat directly. There really is no rhyme or reason. And there's one archaeologist that has spent his entire career creating a map of these tombs in the Valley of the Kings. So we now have, based on his work, not only this two-dimensional piece of paper with the map on it, but there is a digital three-dimensional map that's got the proper amount of elevation and how far below the surface things are, and where the turns are and everything. So that's the first time in history that anything like that has existed. You can see the entrances to the tombs in the valley are all over the place. Some of them are right at street level. You just walk in. Some of them you have to go on the right here. You can see you just disappear down a long stairway to get to the entrance. Some of them you have to go up a set of steps to go into the tomb. And whoever said what goes up must come down, yep, that's true. Once you get in this tomb, you go down really steeply. It's actually one of the deeper ones. So I got to see 5 tombs in the valley. 4 of them come with the basic ticket, and which 4 are open from day to day varies. So if I were to go back again, or if you go, you might not see the same ones I got to see. But on my visit, we got to see the tombs of Ramses III, Ramses IV, Ramses VI, and I don't have in the after party pictures. I've got tombs of the pictures of the 4th one. But I paid extra to go in the tomb of Tutankhamun. So you could go in there. In the tomb of Ramses III, you can see how ornately carved and brightly painted these tombs are. Think back to the Great Pyramid where there were no carvings, no paint, just stone. And keep in mind that this is 1100 BC, so 1400 years, 1500 years nearly after the Great Pyramid. So the style of tomb building has changed dramatically in the course of that time. So in this picture on the left, you can see Ramses presiding over his vanquished enemies. And in the picture on the right, you see another example of the solar boat. Take a look at that picture on the left. Ramses III was a great warrior king. Do you notice anything about on the top half there where his vanquished enemies? I'll give you a hint. They're missing an important body part.
The head.
Yep, they're all missing their heads.
Okay, that's pretty important.
Yep. Egypt was invaded by by invaders who were known as the Sea People, and that's why there are serpents around through there. And when he captured, they put up such a fight and were so destructive to the territory that they were trying to conquer that when he captured them, he beheaded some of their leaders. And all of the stories about the pharaohs, as well as incantations and things, instructions for passing through the stages of the nighttime, the journey through the netherworld. Everything you can think of is captured and included in the hieroglyphics on the walls of these tombs. So Ramses III lived to a ripe old age and had many adult children. Most of the pharaohs of this area had one great royal wife and several secondary wives, which meant that most of the time they had multiple sons, any one of whom might aspire to become the next pharaoh. So there was a fair degree of, shall we say, sibling rivalry. Well, what happened to Ramses is that one of his secondary wives decided that she was going to come up with a plan to put her son, who was not scheduled to be the next pharaoh, but she wanted him to take over, and become king. So she plotted to assassinate Ramses III and the crown prince, who was, in line for the throne. And so she actually succeeded in killing Ramses III. He was poisoned, but they did not succeed in killing the crown prince. So he actually lived, and not only did he become pharaoh, but he captured all the plotters and put them to death and all of that. But that is a very famous episode known as the Harem Plot. And it was King Ramses III that was killed that way.
Barb, before you move on here, we've got, so which was it Ramses III that married his daughter? Do you know?
Most of them. I don't know if they married daughters, but most of them married their sisters.
Okay,
the
all right.
Egyptians believed that they were, that the royal blood was superior to, any inferior common blood. And in order to preserve the royal line, the thing to do was to marry your sister. So, or close, if there wasn't a sister convenient, it would be, a close relative, a first cousin or something like that. But yes, tons of inbreeding.
And okay, and Liz and Carly are cheering on the fierce women. So rock and roll, girls. Okay, roll on, Barb.
All right. So the second tomb that not necessarily the second in order, but we're gonna now go to the tomb of Ramses IV. And this guy is the crown prince that survived the harem plot and went on to become Ramses IV. You can see the entrance to his tomb is right at street level there. You can kind of see here, there's a little like street sign that says Ramses IV, and it's KV2. That's how you identify which tomb it is, the letters KV, and then the first one discovered is KV1, this was the second one discovered, and so on and so forth. So now I have a little video here on the right to give you a sense of what it's like to walk into one of these tombs. If you're real quiet, there's not much sound to it, but if you're real quiet, you might be able to hear my cousin say, "Oh, wow, 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 wow." So that's about all the sound that's there, but just the visual to give you a sense. I'm going to go ahead and start this. Whoops, no, I'm not. I wondered what happened. Come on, there. Come on. Ah, fiddly mouse. There, okay. Now let's try and start this. So carvings, paint. I'm sure the paint was brighter over 3,000 years ago when it was originally done, but still, you know, very bright and discernible today. And, you know, Lisa, your question again about, you can just see I wasn't the only one impacted by the history and by the act of walking into one of these tombs. So next there's, this is the same tomb, Ramses IV. You can see, you know, how high the ceiling is. And there are side rooms here. Not all tombs had side chambers, but this one did. And you can, in this picture, just make out at the end, that's the sarcophagus in the king's chamber. This is the picture in the king's chamber, how enormous the stone sarcophagus is. But keep in the back of your mind the size, the relative size of this room, because it's, you know, you can put quite a few people in there, but it's, you know, when our group of 25 people was there, we couldn't all get in around here at the same time. So it's, you know, it's not a huge space at all. So keep that in mind. And then we're going to go in the tomb now of Ramses VI. This was another son of Ramses III, who was the warrior king who was assassinated in the harem plot. So Ramses IV was his son. Ramses VI was the brother of Ramses IV, also the son of Ramses III. And his tomb was extremely ornately decorated, much longer and deeper. So you can kind of see in the middle picture that it goes down and down and down, with more side chambers over here. And then the last little bit going down to the king's chamber, you can see how steep that ramp was with the sarcophagus at the end. Now, let me show you a little bit of wow factor here. This panorama is the size of the king's chamber here. Think back to Ramses IV, where the room was a little bit bigger than the sarcophagus, and you have this enormous chamber deep underground to house the sarcophagus of the king. So it's not just the decorations on the walls here. The ceiling is also incredibly ornately decorated. And I'm gonna fast forward and let you see the ceiling. I apologize for the fisheye effect, but you can see here the story of this ceiling is that the goddess Nut swallows the sun at night, and the sun passes through her body during the night, and in the morning she gives birth to the sun again so the new day can begin. And now I've got some enlargements, some zoom in enlargements to let you see what's going on in some parts of this picture. So here's the part where she's swallowing it. You can see the red sun disk. She's just about to swallow the sun at the end of the day, and the sun is beginning its journey through her body at night. And in this part, you see the legs. The sun is emerging, you know, to where she gives birth to it in the morning, so it can begin its journey during the day. So those are the ones. How are we doing on time, Joe? Then I've got a couple more slides of Tutankhamun. And people,
yep, you're good. I've already told folks what's happening next week and the week after, so don't worry about it. I've given Edie an advertising shot. A couple questions though, Barb.
Yep.
From Jordan asking, it's all hieroglyphics on either side of the, you know, all through through the tomb, and also Kristen asking, is it behind glass or is it all open air when you're in there?
It's mostly open air. I'm going to start with that one. There are places at the front where it's like plexiglass from the waist level down to keep you from like kicking it or, you know, dropping something that would then splatter up and ding the walls. But it really is not behind glass. It's, wow. I was astonished, and just, it's incredible to me that it isn't. But, you know, most of the stuff is available, and they do ask you not to touch it. But, you know how people are, right? Some people will listen to that and some people won't.
Wet paint, yeah. And you've given Dr. Erin some new concerns or curiosity with what she's going to do with herself once she dies now, Barb. So thank you. For
and what was Jordan's question again? Remind me.
Jordan was just asking about if it's hieroglyphics all over the place, and it looks like
it is. Hieroglyphics all over the place. Yes.
Yeah.
The hieroglyphics, ceilings. We know a lot about them now. The way we found out. Does anybody know how we found out about how to read the hieroglyphics? Anybody?
No.
That's it. Rosetta Stone. When that was discovered, the Rosetta Stone has 3 different. The same text is repeated in 3 different ways. One way is Greek, one way is Demotic, which is more alphabetic characters from ancient Egypt, and the third way is hieroglyphs. So that's the way they began being able to, deciphering the Rosetta Stone is the way they began to be able to read the hieroglyphs. Wow. And you know, they've continued to build the expertise and knowledge in that. There is a replica of the Rosetta Stone in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo that we saw. The original, anybody know where that is?
Jordan? Strikeout. Jordan didn't know it was a Rosetta Stone, and he thinks it's in the British Museum.
Yeah, it's in the British Museum in London. Yeah.
Jordan, that's a freaking genius, man. I love you. And Harmony's wondering, Barb, if they actually have translated everything inside the tomb.
No, there's too much of it.
Yeah, I was going to say way too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
The tour guide that I had in 2016 had a master's degree in hieroglyphic translation. And he would just take, you know, even like, let's say on the top where you see where the leg, she's giving birth, but all those figures along the top, he would like give us a story. We sort of got to know by the end of the 5 days, you could kind of get the gist of some of the stories, and the characters all started to look alike, but it was way too much, like unbelievable detail, unbelievable detail.
Yep.
Your pictures are fantastic, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the tour guides all have to go to university. They have to have a degree in tourism and hosting. And they may specialize in hieroglyphics or, you know, in just aspects of history or whatever, but they did that. I've got quite a bit more scenes of hieroglyphics in the pictures of temples and things. But he did that for us. He would interpret and tell us stories of what the hieroglyphics were saying, and you know, taught us the different ways. The hieroglyphics actually may read in any direction. Some read left to right, some read right to left, some read up to down, some read down to up. And he showed us how to tell the difference, how to tell which direction things are reading and stuff like that. Yeah, they're really good. They're serious about making sure that their tour guides add value.
All right, Barb, folks can drop off as they need to, but the rest of us are buckled in and we're just, you know, finishing our
life. Loving it.
Let's go see King Tut.
Yes. Oh, I don't think we should.
And I should have announced before I put this picture up, if anybody doesn't want to see a mummy, these are the only pictures of the mummies, but you might want to look away for a few minutes if you're sensitive to that. And don't want to see that. But Tutankhamun was known as the Boy King, came to the throne. A lot of us probably know the story. He was 9 years old when he came to the throne. He ruled for about 10 years and died around 19. His tomb is much smaller and less ornate than many of the others in the valley. If you look at the dates, The tombs we have been looking at were from about 1150, roughly, BCE. Tut is about mid-1300s BCE. So he's 200 years further back in history than some of the tombs we were just looking at. But that's not the whole reason for this. The supposition that a lot of the archaeologists are believing here is that while there's still some disagreement about his actual cause of death, there's little disagreement that he seems to have died fairly suddenly. And we talked about how long it takes to prepare an elaborate tomb. The Egyptians actually had a very strict schedule for mummification. Certain things had to happen a certain number of days after death, and there was no wiggle room around that. You didn't mummify him and stick him in storage until they finished the tomb. No, that didn't happen. So at 70 days after death, the mummification process had to be finished, and they took the mummy into the tomb and sealed the door.
Wow.
So because of that, when he died suddenly, there is speculation that they utilized another tomb that was smaller and less elaborate than a pharaoh would otherwise have merited.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So King Tutankhamun is the son of a pharaoh by the name of Akhenaten. His nickname is the Heretic King. And there's an entire story around that. And I've got pictures and art from his reign and can tell you the entire story, but he was quite controversial, and let me just leave it at that. While his father is known for certain, there is less certainty around who his mother is. It's possible that his mother was Nefertiti. And if you think about that gorgeous bust that's in the museum in Berlin, Nefertiti with the Egyptian crown, the classic Egyptian beauty. It's possible that Nefertiti was his mother, but because she was Akhenaten's great royal wife and there were several other lesser wives, it's also possible that Tut was the son of one of the lesser wives. Nefertiti was his stepmother. His mummy is the only one that was actually located in the tomb in the Valley of the Kings. And the reason that he's so famous is because this tomb is the only royal tomb that was found intact. Robbers hadn't gotten to it. When Howard Carter opened this thing up in 1922, he not only found the intact mummy, but he found over 5,000 artifacts.
Wow.
Yes.
And I've got some pictures of some of the artifacts, in a slide or two coming up. Unfortunately, the reason that King Tut is covered by the sheet here is because Carter didn't, he did some damage to the mummy when he tried to unwrap it and open it up and see what was going on there. So his head is intact, his feet are intact, although you can see there's a belief that he may have even had a club foot, and there's significant issues with his feet. But the mummification is good, and you can see his head and feet, and then they've got the sheet covering it. Most of the damage was to his torso and the middle parts of his body.
Great pictures. Yeah, I just love that one.
So this picture is the opposite wall. You basically just, you face the pharaoh along one wall, and then you just turn around, and this is what you're looking at. The stone slab down there was added in. That's not original. That's not where he was originally. But they believe this is the side where he was originally, he was when Carter found him. The painting along the wall is interesting there. The figure in white here is Tutankhamun as the god Osiris in the afterlife. So the person on the very far right is believed to be Tutankhamun's successor, a guy by the name of Ai. And what's going on is that Ai is preparing to do the opening of the mouth ceremony. And that ceremony is really important. It's the last thing, basically the last thing that happens in the mummification and burial process. The king's mouth has got to be opened so that the spirit can enter and leave the body as necessary in the afterlife. I was not related to Tut. It's believed that he was like the prime minister. And the reason for that, Tut was 19. There were 2 infant daughters, premature daughters that were buried in the tomb with him. He is several generations deep of inbreeding, and he married his sister. And so their children, they didn't have any surviving living children. And because of that, the dynasty came to the end with him, and this guy took over. There was a period of discontinuity in terms of who was going to inherit. There wasn't an immediate new dynasty installed. And eventually a dynasty came to the throne that resulted in Ramses the Great. So, you'll hear the Egyptologists say, if there hadn't been the inbreeding and Tut had not died childless, you wouldn't have had Ramses the Great. So interesting stories. You can see just one more real quick, fun human interest thing. These people standing here, I couldn't go over there. They had that blocked off. This was a crew from National Geographic. They were there filming on the day that we were there. And this guy here in the blue shirt, I was chatting with him outside as he was drinking his coffee and as we were touring the other tombs. And then when I got there, he was down there in there with them. And it wasn't until I watched the special in August last year when it was on the air that I realized that this guy was the main Egyptologist on the TV show, taking me through all of the tombs. And here I am, oblivious, chatting with him over his coffee. So, all right. So some of the artifacts from the tomb.
Wow.
I don't have an original picture. This is I've scrounged a picture from the Royal Museum, or the Egyptian Museum, with Tut's death mask there, the iconic picture of the death mask. I did see it, but they have an entire room in that museum of artifacts from the tomb, and you are not allowed to take pictures in that room. So the pictures that I do have here were from like the corridors outside the room where you could take pictures. But this is Tut's solar boat, one of them that was in the tomb. This is his throne. And you can see, the goddess Isis with her wings along the side of the throne, protecting the king. This wooden box was one of the wooden boxes that the stone sarcophagus was found inside of. So think Russian nesting dolls here. There were 4 sarcophagus and 4 wooden boxes.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
We're just so lucky that the robbers didn't get, if you think, Barb, all the robbers that took all the artifacts and all the mummies, and so to find this one and think there were 57 or whatever, just beautiful. We're so lucky that we have this still.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason they think that this one wasn't found is if you look at where it's situated in the valley, it is directly across from like a little, what do you call a little crevice or a wash, right? So the rains are so infrequent that when they do have a deluge, all of the mud washes down, runs downhill, and it ran right over top of the entrance to his tomb. Wow. And then it kind of solidified. So it really took years and years and years. Howard Carter searched for 7 or 8 years, I think, before finding the entrance to the tomb.
That's beautiful. We're very lucky.
But all of the artifacts are no longer in this museum where I saw them. They have now been moved. The Grand Egyptian Museum is open now, And the plan was to move all 5,000 plus of his artifacts over to the new museum. And that museum is located literally right outside the Great Pyramid.
Yeah, so it's more accessible, right?
Yep. You don't have to go into downtown Cairo and fight all the traffic in order to get to it.
So interesting though to see. I wonder how you'd feel looking at the artifacts that are now in a museum as compared to when you were actually in his tomb. You know, you were there where they were found, right? So
yes.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that feels different for you.
Yep.
Joe, the Airbnb that I stayed in Cairo, Mahmoud, you'll see him on the internet. His condo was exactly right across from where the new museum was going to open. It wasn't open yet when I was there in 2016. And when we went out on the balcony, because they have it all covered so that the sand doesn't get into the condo itself. But at night you open the windows and the light show is right there.
Right there in the
We didn't even have to walk over to it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And but I can't imagine them moving all this stuff. Like I just I can't imagine them moving it out, but I can't imagine them moving it to another location.
Yeah.
And actually, Jane Ann, when Barb will do one more of these, I think she has enough photographs to like 10 of these shows for a couple hours long. But Barb, when you were talking in the Valley of the Kings, when they actually moved some of these actual statues that are stories and stories and stories tall, Jane Ann, and they moved them. You know, they just cut them up and moved them. And it's like, it's almost like it's a marvel of engineering to do it today.
Yeah.
And
they did, you know.
You're talking about Abu Simbel, which is a real world treasure. And it needed to be moved because they were building the Aswan High Dam. And when that dam was completed, it was going to be flooded.
And they'd be all gone, you know, so they moved everything. I mean, it's just, it's fascinating.
It still boggles my mind.
Boggles your mind.
And there was one, and I forget which Ramses it was, Barb, but it was the size of a church on the inside. It had all been painted in this sort of aqua green color. It was amazing. And maybe that's it.
Ramses VI, the king's chamber in there is
massive, absolutely incredible. Massive.
Never seen anything like it.
Going back there.
Yeah, really, really amazing. All right, well, I'm going to fast forward us a little bit. This is on board one of the boats that cruised the Nile. Part of the trip was a 3-night Nile cruise. And so the top of the boat has a little sun deck on it. You can go up there and take pictures. The boats dock along the east bank of the Nile, where the city of Luxor is today.
Love it.
But you look across the Nile to the west, and the Valley of the Kings is behind those little hills right over there. So that's how close it is to Luxor today.
Okay.
And you can see the feluccas sailing on the Nile. There are only about 1 million of those. Everywhere you look, they're there.
Oh.
All right, how are people doing? I got a few more really cool things. If you're wanting to hang in for a few more minutes. Joe, you want me to just keep going?
Yeah, did you go to Hip Shoe Shot? Hip Shoe?
She might be chasing the dog, but keep going, Barb.
Yeah. Hatshepsut. Yes, I did. I went to the mortuary temple for Hatshepsut.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't pronounce it.
Yeah. This is an ancient Egyptian calendar and work log. I thought this was like the coolest thing. This is carved into the temple at Kom Ombo, which is partway down, south of Luxor on the way down to Aswan, along the river in the town of Kom Ombo. The temple itself is Ptolemaic. So it's from about the 2nd century BCE. It's much newer than the Valley of the Kings, and certainly much newer, millennia newer than the pyramids. And this is what the carved wall of the temple looks like. And then I zoomed and enlarged to create this little pullout here so you can kind of see what's going on and read these hieroglyphs. So the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptian year was 360 days long. And they had kind of a 5-day interregnum period that wasn't really part of any year. And, you know, they didn't have any duties. It was kind of their vacation week. But their main year was 360 days long, and they had 3 seasons instead of 4. Their seasons had to do with the cycle of the Nile and the planting. So their seasons were inundation or flood season, planting and growing season, and then harvest. Each season was exactly 4 months long, 120 days, organized into 30-day months, and each 30-day month contained 3 10-day weeks. So a little bit different than ours, but very well organized. So the picture on the right, if you can see this larger circle disc, that means that it's planting season, growing season. So that's the season that it is. And then if you look even farther to the right, there's 1 disc here. So this means that it's the first month of the growing season. These 2 little horseshoes mean it's the second week of the first month of the growing season. And these little vertical slash marks are which day of the week. So this is day 3, this is day 4, this is day 5, this is day 6. And when you read over here, this is the log of what happened, what offerings they made, what ceremonies they performed, anything that was important for them to capture. So this is their ancient calendar and work log. Just absolutely astonishing.
It's the detail.
Yeah, unbelievable. This little series here shows you, you know, they would basically actually walk into this well. This was how they measured the level of the flood, the Nile inundation. You can see the little steps going down here. The Nile, you know, it was kind of like the 3 Bears, you know, it was too hot or too cold or just right. So the Nile could flood too much, and that was bad. It could flood too little, and that was bad. But there was kind of a just right sweet spot. And they based all of their taxation off of, you know, what level the Nile was flooding. So they had to know, and there were a number of these spots. This temple at Kom Ombo was one of the spots where they had these methods, these wells sunk to measure the level of inundation.
Barb, do you know when we moved from the calendar that you were just sharing to the European calendar? Like as a,
you know, I don't know. Is that Gregorian? Is that the Gregorian calendar?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would have been, you know, Christian.
Google
era.
it, Christian.
This is like an aqueduct. Oh my gosh.
So look away if if you're sensitive and don't want to see mummies.
Oh, I love it.
I love my mummy.
Look at the fingernails on that one.
Yeah, these again, I saw these and my pictures didn't come out nearly as good. So I have grabbed these pictures from the museum and you know, used them here. This is Ramses the Great. He lived, you know, there were whole generations of Egyptians that were born, lived, and died while he was reigning as pharaoh. He reigned for over 60 years. He was, you know, in his early 90s when he died, and that was absolutely unheard of in that era to live that long. But you can actually see the fingernails here. You can see his hook nose and his sharp chin and his red hair. So the mummy is just incredible on this. His father is Pharaoh Seti I, the father of Ramses. And this is Ramses' son, one of his many sons, Meremptah, who went on to become a pharaoh. And if you remember back to the Valley of the Kings with the steps going up to steeply up to the tomb, that was this guy's tomb. So what goes up must come down. So you had to walk up a steep set of steps to get in, and then you had to go down quite a bit once you got in. And this guy is Thutmose III, and he is the stepson of Hatshepsut. And there is a fabulous story that if we do this again with the other temples and things, I'll tell you all about Hatshepsut, who is a real badass woman in her day.
Yeah.
And her stepson and the dish the dirt on the conflicts that they had and what happened there. Kamambo, Egyptians mummified everything. They mummified people, they mummified cats, they mummified bulls, they mummified birds, and they mummified crocodiles. And the temple at Kamambo is dedicated to the crocodile god Sobek. And so they've found all kinds of mummified crocodiles around this temple. The next, this is inside the tomb of Merenptah, who is the son of Ramses. We saw his photograph, and this is how deep, there are two of these consecutively, how deep this tomb goes to get down in there. And once you get down there, this was the only tomb where there were really Egyptian attendants down there kind of watching to make sure people didn't get wild and crazy with anything they could get to. And one of the guys was situated right outside this little side chamber with the statue of Isis. And if you gave him a tip, AKA bribe, that was the equivalent of about a US $1.25, he would take you behind the ropes and let you have your picture made with Isis. So.
Of course you're going to do that.
Of course. Souvenirs. This was the one thing that I wish somebody had told me to prepare for before I went. The souvenirs are everywhere and the vendors are very aggressive. They make their money on tourists, and after the Arab Spring, they had a several-year dry spell where there wasn't much tourism going on. And so they were hungry and they were very aggressive, and they had beads and they had tunics and they had little pyramid paperweights and everything you can imagine, little statues of every god you can imagine. And they were trying to get you to buy all of it. And some of them were a little more aggressive than I was comfortable with. So travel in packs so you don't get stuck. If you go there. And then finally, just this last picture, the Egyptians are very willing to pose for pictures. Again, they'll pose with you if you want your picture made with them. They're quite friendly. They're American friendly. I imagine Canadian friendly.
Yes, very much so.
And after they take whatever pictures you want, then they hand you back your camera and hold their hand out for you to tip them. So, this guy was at one of the temples, the Temple Philae in southern Egypt. So that's it. What other questions? What else was popping in the chat box?
Barb, I am going to say that Kristen figured out that today is the year 6263 in the Egyptian calendar, which we were all on pins and needles about. Kristen, thank you so much. I don't even know. The chat box is full of
amazing.
And before we do anything else, how about some real live claps, out loud claps, man?
Yeah, way to go. That was great. Fantastic. I'm sitting in my living room. Look, I have a whole collage of pictures from Egypt. And so your info was fabulous. And the add-ons. I think you need to be a tour guide. You need to forget sanctuary in the pyramids, right?
Hey, Jane,
We'll do that. We'll do that.
You can do two things, Jane. She can be a
I love it's a passion and a hobby of mine for a long time. So, I watch every Nat Geo or History Channel special on Egypt I can possibly find. I'm just a nut about it. So
I sat on the airplane to Luxor with a gentleman who was reading a book, and he said, how many times have you been? I go, oh, this is my first time. And every year for 25 years, he's gone back. And he said, absolutely every year he learns something amazing, something new, and sees something he's never seen before. I thought that was just 25 years. Unbelievable. He is a historian, but that's his life. He just incredible.
Yeah. That's how much depth and breadth of history is there.
Yes.
Really and truly. That's a comment on the site and what's there to work from.
Well, it's
I'm
like
seeing the chat box now. Kristen, you asked if I felt safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did.
Mm-hmm.
Tourism is incredibly important to the Egyptian economy. And they are really serious about making sure people feel safe. So when we all arrived at the airport in Cairo, we had a guard that boarded the bus with us to protect us and rode right on the bus with us. And we had a police escort to get through the traffic in Cairo to get to our hotel.
Agreed. Been there, done that. Yeah.
But in most of the city areas, we did have guards. The guard didn't travel with us the whole way, but we had, we pick up guards in the next city where, like when we went from Cairo to Luxor.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit when I went to Greece, which is, oh God, I think 10 or 12 years ago now. But in Athens, the tour guide gave me instructions on how to use public transportation, how to carry my purse, what areas to stay out of. But once, as long as I followed those instructions and kind of stayed within bounds, I did feel very safe. But it's a city, right? It's just it's a city and it's a foreign country,
right.
But oh God, no, Egypt's been on my bucket list for a long time, Barb. You gave me like 8 things to do later.
Yeah. Me too.
Well, I called this one Pharaoh's Valley of the Kings, but I have, if you guys like this and want to do part 2, we'll schedule it for later in the year. But I have all kinds of amazing pictures of Karnak Temple and Luxor Temple and Abu Simbel, which Joe was talking about, was cut into pieces and relocated. And, other bits and pieces about Cairo, about the city of Cairo and driving around there, about Aswan, pictures of the Aswan High Dam. So we could do kind of a part 2 if you guys are interested in that.
How long were you there again? I know you said at the beginning. I'm sorry, I forgot.
8 days. 8 days in country. Yeah, 1 travel day over, 1 travel day back.
Would you go again?
I would absolutely go again.
Will you take me? Just kidding.
Maybe we can have, maybe it's a sanctuary to tombs. We can do a whole nother, AK Kristen, you just started something there. Sanctuary on the road in a big way. Yeah, absolutely. Do some real traveling together as we
let me check my lottery tickets. Hold on.
Well, and honestly, Kristen, when we began Sanctuary at Sea, we went on a couple cruises, and then we created Sanctuary on the Road, a year of camping last year, which didn't occur because we wanted folks to save money to do Sanctuary at Sea Alaska. And we have all these logos already built out. So there's, it's not beyond the pale to think a few of us might want to do a trip together. I mean, as we build these networks, there's no reason we can't meet at the airport, right, Barb, and do a tour. Even wouldn't that be interesting, Barb? You went with complete strangers except for your cousin, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jane Ann did.
Yeah. Well, and so I was on
my cousin. We went with a tour company.
Pardon? So again, Barb and then Jane Ann. Barb.
Yeah, we went with a tour company, and my cousin has traveled with them. This was her 7th trip with this tour company. Yeah. So she knew them very well, and knew that they operated well, and they were reliable and everything. But yeah, we had a group of 25. And I think they sold out the tour and added one. And I think we were the second add-on. I think we were the second tour because there was another tour that was kind of paralleling us at the same time. And they had 40 people in their group. Wow. And that's about their normal size. Mm-hmm. But our group was smaller. We had 25 or 26.
How nice.
Wow.
And Jane Ann, how did you do it?
It didn't feel terrible. No, it felt good. It felt comfortable.
I feel so spoiled because I researched this guy, Mahmoud, online. He was an Airbnb host, as was I at the time. And so I was on a 21-day Holy Land trip, and we said, oh, we're over here now. We might as well go. So we flew to Istanbul, flew to Cairo. He met us. We stayed in his home, and there was just the two of us and him in a private car. It was unbelievable. It was phenomenal.
Wow.
5 days, 2 days in Cairo, 5 days in Luxor, and then flew to Dubai. But then he set up the Luxor. He was just in Cairo. He set up the Luxor. Ishmael was the fellow that was the hieroglyphic specialist. And when we went to Karta and I was like totally in another world. I was fascinated. And I remember him drawing in the sand in the one temple. And I said, you know, we talk about pyramids selling and stuff. I said, my view about pyramids is never going to be the same. But he was so full of knowledge, as are you. Like, you've gleaned so much and learned so much because it's become a hobby. And so he would, and Mahmoud, he doesn't do large groups. He likes it between 8 and 12 people at the most. But we were just 2. We had him for 3 days, and we had him all to ourselves.
We could probably get 8 to 12 people, Jane.
And you know what? It wasn't that expensive. Like, it really was not. And in Luxor, I stayed in a condo overlooking the Nile. The lady ran it. She was from Sweden. $26 Canadian a night. Mm.
That's like $1.50 American, guys. I mean, that's like maybe.
Yeah, seriously. It was, and you book it from here. So you get charged in the country you book it in. So. Wow. And I think he was $75 a day, plus the driver, the car, Wi-Fi, and his expertise.
Wow. Well, Barb, I think we've got enough proof that we'd love to see on the night.
I think it should be Sanctuary and Cleopatra.
There you go. Barb, start titling them, girlfriend. And you know, actually, folks, I do
have to say that the hardest part about tonight was ducking and avoiding Tom Cole, who wanted to paint Egyptian eyes on me.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, and I will tell you, Barb, I think you have enough photographs, you know, and like Jane said, the stories, and you brought so much history back with you because you're immersed yourself in it, right? And what we also want to do is jump off what Barb's doing. And if any of you, you know, Kristen, you said Greece, if any of you have other great trips like this, there's no reason. Occasionally at Sanctuary Online, we need like a light night, and doing a travel log and having someone tee up. Again, Barb, you had 37 slides in an hour, probably closer to 25 to 30 slides, and the stories with the Q&A. There's no reason, my friends, why, if you haven't been somewhere phenomenal, Jordan, Cole, we couldn't ask you to tee one of these up, put it in the can. And then occasionally, as we're programming and preparing our next month's programming or a few months ahead, we've got everything planned and we can't get a week figured out. And it'd be wonderful to pull out a travel log from one of you all. And it's, as we proved tonight, it's a wonderful night of conversation. We learn something, we have a little bit of fun, you know. So Barb, thank you again so much. And my friends, let's tee this up. If you've been somewhere, let us know. If you've got 25, you know, slides, we can even help you create the slides. Barb's yours were gorgeous tonight. So we've got a tiny bit of not young person, highly technical, but old ladies learning expertise here and to build these. And Barb, your polls and a little bit of your video and the, you know, the little racy guy crawling across just makes it really quite nice. And we can help you with any of that. So I am gonna do one quick.
And don't forget my engineering.
Engineering, Barb.
Cool.
Yeah, don't forget my engineering achievements.
Your engineering achievements. 100%. Oh yes, exactly. You had little visual displays. So I want you to remember next week.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Did I just screw something up here. There we go. Edie, next week, a new Sanctuary Online, we're going to be doing Meet the Artist. We have Edie hooked up for this week, next Tuesday. So that's going to be fascinating. If you have not begun to read your book yet, The Book of Longings by Sue Monk Kidd, please grab that. Cheryl is loving the change and enjoying this book. And then we've got May set up already. So Arbor Day, if you're doing any kind of landscaping or thinking of it, and God bless you if you're in Texas, and I know we've had so much destroyed down there. Bud Twilley, who's done wonderful work at Sanctuary, a good friend of Sanctuary in the Woods, he will be on and being interviewed and sharing landscaping techniques and ideas for us. Don't tell my mother yet, but I think we're going to interview her on Mother's Day, May 11th, the week of Mother's Day. Kristen, do not Facebook Messenger her. She hasn't said yes yet, but I forgot to ask her. But we thought it'd be kind of cool to interview Mom because she's got so many great stories and so many of you love her so much. And also to honor our moms, our grandmoms, our other mother figures. So we'll be taking photographs in like we did previously and earlier in the year, and having you send us some pictures. Maybe we'll tell some stories that night. Meet the Artist, oil painter Jason Hanish. I believe Ken is going to be interviewing Jason. Phenomenal. And excited to have Jason come on and show you some of his great work. And then also back to the regular schedule, a book conversation end of the month, a book we will vote on at the end of this month when we finish our book. And as always, we just thank you for spending your Tuesday evenings with us. We feel very honored. So namaste.
Namaste.
Wash your hands. Stay safe.
I think we need to have Jordy do a presentation of his trip to South America.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jordan, plan on being pressured. Okay, my young friend. Okay. Pressured by Tom, pressured by Ken, pressured by Darcel, pressured by Cheryl, pressured by me. Anybody else you need, Jordan? We can call.
I think that's just about it.
Cindy will pressure you.
Cindy's good to
Hi,
see
Cindy.
She's still hanging out on the double FaceTime there.
I know. Shot.
Yes.
Shot. All right. Love y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Love you. Thanks, Barb.
Y'all be well.
Thank you, Barb.
Bye. Nice.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Night.
All right.
Bye-bye.